There are places on an older woman's body she no longer expects anyone to touch, and that's exactly why she craves them the most. They're not on her skin, they're in her story, in her unresolved hunger, in that part of her that's still alive, but asleep. Most men think that as the years go by, a mature woman becomes less sensual, but it's actually the opposite. She becomes more selective. She no longer reacts out of instinct, she reacts out of power. And if you don't know where to touch, or how to touch, you become just another one of her lukewarm disappointments. Today I'm going to show you the 7 secret places where an older woman surrenders, not to crude touch, but to the man who understands what her body can't hide. The last one is the one very few know about, but when you awaken it, she never looks at you the same. I'm Celia, and I'm not here to teach you techniques. I'm here to give you back the power, the kind that awakens her, that subdues her without force, that makes her feel like a woman again. Stay until the end, because after this video, the way you touch will never be the same. Have you ever felt like you were touching, but not really touching anything? Like you had her body, yes, but not her surrender. She let you, but she didn't give herself to you. And you, without knowing why, walked out of that bed more frustrated than when you got in. Emptier, lonelier, as if you'd been with a woman, but without a soul. If that's ever happened to you, it's because you never touched the place that reminds her who's in control. And yes, this is the first point of this video, the place that reminds her who's in control. An older woman doesn't get turned on by predictable touches. She's been touched by many men, some gentle, others mechanical, all convinced they knew what they were doing. But none of them could read her hidden desire, that part of her body where fear and surrender mix, where she doesn't feel admired, but possessed. And we're not talking about violence here. We're talking about masculine presence, about energy that commands without needing force. That place doesn't have a name in anatomy books. They don't teach it in seduction courses, because it's not a physical spot. It's a space between control and intuition, between her neck and her will. A place that awakens when you take her firmly, but without desperation. When your hand doesn't ask, it declares. I remember a man who came to see me after his 3rd divorce. He said he was always a good lover, that he never lacked tenderness or attention. But his women left him. Or worse, they stayed, but cold, dead inside. And when we started to explore his intimacy, something became clear. He touched to be liked, not to lead. And that might work for a while with a younger woman. But with a mature woman, it's a death sentence for desire. Because she doesn't want to be taken care of in bed. She wants to be conquered. She wants someone to remind her that she can still lose control. And that, my dear, doesn't happen with timid caresses. It happens with a firm hand on the back of her neck, or on the exact curve of her hip, or on the inner part of her thigh where she knows if you go any higher, there's no turning back. Touching her, there isn't just physical contact, it's a message. It says, with me, you don't have to fake control. Here, you can drop the mask. And when an older woman feels that, her body responds like she's 20 again, but only if you, as a man, are willing to embody something very few dare to today. Subtle dominance. The kind that doesn't humiliate, but doesn't ask for permission either. If a woman has ever told you, touch me softer, or let's take it slow, don't mistake that for sweetness. Sometimes, behind those words, there's a test. She's trying to see if you'll obey or lead. Because if you obey, she loses interest. But if you understand that her words are a trap to test your presence, and you take her with strength, not rough but firm, then she breaks. Not out of weakness, out of desire. So next time you're with a mature woman, don't think about techniques. Think about energy, your straight back, your steady gaze, your hand landing exactly where her body no longer expected to feel. Because when you touch that place, you're not just caressing her, you're waking her up. And that's when everything else begins. If you understood what I told you before, you should no longer touch with hesitation. You should touch with certainty, because the desire of a mature woman isn't triggered by what you do, but by what she senses you're willing to do. And that language, even though it's physical, begins long before the first touch. It starts with what you project. But there's an even more secret, more powerful place, one no man ever considers an erogenous zone, and yet, when touched, it brings down all her defenses. We've arrived at the second key point of this video, the invisible space between her words. Many men think seduction happens in bed. They're wrong. Seduction begins in the pause, in that exact moment when she says something and you don't respond right away. When she leaves a sentence hanging in the air and you don't rush to fill it. Because there, in that tense silence, in that micro moment, where her need to control clashes with your ability to hold your ground, that's where true conquest begins. It's not a physical place, but it's a psychological territory where leadership is tested. And if you can't hold that space without fear, without anxiety, without explaining yourself, she takes control. But if you hold it with presence, without needing to justify or validate yourself, she breaks inside. Because that space, that gap between her phrases, is where she searches for the man who doesn't need words to be felt. Modern seduction coaches don't teach this because it's not a technique, it's composure. It's the ability not to react. And in Stoic philosophy, that has a name, self-mastery. The Stoic doesn't respond to please. He doesn't act to be accepted. He observes, he waits, and when he moves, he does so with intention. That's how you must be with a mature woman. She'll throw out phrases designed to confuse you, to see if you unravel, to measure your anxiety. I'm not sure I'm ready. It's hard for me to trust. I need my time. And if you're weak, you rush to respond, to reassure, to promise. But if you're solid, you stay silent. You don't flinch, you don't correct, you just look at her and let her own words echo inside her until she becomes uncomfortable with her own game. That silence isn't emptiness, it's power, because it tells her something no speech ever could. I don't bend to your emotional chaos, I'm the center that brings you order. And when a mature woman feels that, she feels something she's rarely felt in her life, respect mixed with voluntary submission. Because her body will know this man didn't come to beg for anything. He came to show her there's still someone capable of touching her where it hurts the most, her mind. The space between her words is the threshold of her surrender. Because there, in that gap, in that moment when you do nothing, everything happens. She starts to imagine, to project, to tremble, not because of what you say, but because of what she doesn't need you to say. And if you know how to inhabit that invisible space, that energetic pause between one gesture and the next, you'll no longer be just another man. You'll be the man who doesn't need to explain himself, the one who doesn't need to touch, to possess, the one who dominates through silence. And that, believe me, is the deadliest of all. You've already seen what happens when you touch her with presence and when you inhabit silence with control. But all of that needs a tangible expression, something that grounds your energy in her body without confusing it for empty tenderness. Because a woman may be intrigued by your gaze, but she only surrenders when your touch breaks her from the inside. And that brings us to the third point of this video, where everything starts to shift, the edge of her back, right where the trembling begins. That spot isn't written about in any manual. It's not a forbidden area or an explicitly erotic zone, but it's the threshold of her physical surrender. It sits right between control and release. Precisely on the edge, where her spine begins to arch, if you know how to place your hand. It's not her lower back, it's not her waist. It's that narrow, almost imperceptible space where her breath catches for half a second when she feels the exact right pressure, neither too soft nor too forceful. Because what turns on a mature woman isn't the contact itself, it's the intent behind it. If your hand lands there like you're caressing her, she won't respond. But if it lands like you're commanding her, her body has no choice but to obey. I've seen it in my sessions. Women who seemed cold, distant, disconnected, and yet they spoke of how a single gesture could undo them. Not because of what was done, but because of how it was done. One client, divorced after 20 years, once told me, "My ex never knew how to touch me there. He He did everything right, but I felt alone. And when I asked her what there meant, she didn't talk about a physical place. She talked about that exact moment when a man takes her by the back as if to say, I lead, you let go. And that gesture, when it's real, is unforgettable. Because a woman can fake orgasms, but she cannot fake surrender. You want a practical strategy. Here it is. Next time you're with her, don't go straight for the obvious spots. Don't start where everyone else does. Approach her from behind. Touch that edge of her back with firmness, without urgency. Hold your breath and say nothing. Just wait. Her body will speak before her mouth does. If she arches, if she freezes, if she lets out an unconscious sigh, you did it right, because you touched her where no one else dared. Where no one remembered there was still desire. That's the difference between the one who turns her on and the one who owns her. Before we move on to the next points, hit subscribe and give this video a like if it already made you see things differently. Drop a comment below and tell us what country you're watching from, and just write one sentence. I touch her with wisdom, because what's coming goes even deeper. And the final point is the one no woman would ever dare to confess, but if you discover it, she may never desire anyone else again. After touching the edge of her back, that threshold where her body starts speaking without permission, it's easy to fall into a dangerous illusion, to believe you've already got it all under control, that because you made her sigh, you've conquered her. But feminine desire, especially in a mature woman, isn't sustained by fireworks. It lives in the invisible, in what isn't said, but deeply felt. And that's where most men fail, because they confuse attraction with emotional obedience. And that brings us to the fourth point of this video, the exact center of her emotional obedience. This point isn't touched with your hands. It's touched with direction, with certainty, with an energy that says without words, you're not setting the pace, I am. And this is where the most common mistake appears. Many men, after triggering a little reaction, soften. They become accommodating. They give in. They ask. They seek permission. They think that's respect. But it's not. It's fear disguised as chivalry. And a mature woman can smell it from miles away, because she doesn't need to be worshipped. She needs to be commanded, to be held with a gaze that doesn't flinch, to be led, even when she says she doesn't know where she wants to go. The mental trap is thinking that if you give her everything, she'll choose you, that if you understand her, she'll offer you her desire. But it doesn't work that way, because desire isn't born from understanding. It's born from contrast, from the tension between her emotional chaos and your unshakable presence. And if you break, if you hesitate, if you wait for approval before moving forward, she won't feel tenderness. She'll feel pity. And pity, my friend, is where desire goes to die. Want to know why some men seem to have her under their spell without saying a word? Because they don't need validation. They don't ask if it's okay. They don't check if they can move forward. They move. And if she wants to follow, she will. If not, she can step aside. But those men don't trade their energy to be liked. And that's the center of emotional obedience, making her feel she's with a man who doesn't depend on her reaction, who is complete in himself, who doesn't adjust, he asserts, not with aggression, but with composure. When you live in that place, when you don't doubt what you do or what you want, she lets go, because she finally feels like she can stop controlling, that she can stop planning, that she can stop being the one who decides. And that, for a mature woman, is more erotic than any touch, because she doesn't surrender to the perfect man. She surrenders to the steady one, the one who isn't afraid of her walking away, because he's not there to beg, he's there to choose. And if she won't give herself, he'll walk away, but he never weakens. So stop thinking you need to be sweeter, more attentive, more understanding. What you need is to reclaim your center, to look at her like someone who doesn't need to convince her, to touch her like someone who doesn't ask for permission, and to speak like someone who knows his presence is enough. Because right there, that's where she surrenders, not because you touched her, not because you understood her, but because she obeyed you without knowing why. We've reached the point where many men, without even realizing it, lose the control they had just begun to gain. They think things are going well, that she's interested, That desire is starting to flow, and suddenly it fades. Everything cools down, and they have no idea why. There wasn't a fight, no obvious rejection, just a new kind of indifference that wasn't there before. And if that's ever happened to you, if you felt her begin to shut down for no clear reason, it's because you didn't know how to activate the fifth point of this video, her left ear, not the right one, the left. This isn't superstition, it's biology. The left ear connects to the right hemisphere of the brain, the part that processes emotion, desire, imagery, intuition. When you speak into a woman's left ear, you're not speaking to her logic, you're speaking to her longing. And this is where most men fail, because they don't know what to say. Or worse, they say the same things she's heard 1,000 times before. Empty phrases, generic compliments, words without soul. And a mature woman, who's already heard it all, won't surrender to what's nice. She surrenders to what undoes her from within. If you don't know how to use your voice as a direct tool of seduction, you're giving up one of your most powerful weapons, because what a woman hears penetrates her just as deeply as what she feels. But not just any words, not just any tone. It has to be a voice that whispers what she can't control. That says, at the exact right moment, "Don't move," or "Don't speak now," or "I'm not done with you." Simple phrases, charged with certainty, because feminine desire doesn't ignite with shouting, it ignites with whispered authority. But here comes the trap. When men start to see her respond, they get insecure, and they start seeking validation, asking if she likes it, looking for approval with words. And that kills everything, because real seduction isn't something you ask for. It's something you embody. And if you need her to confirm every step, you've already lost. You've gone from being the man who leads to the man who pleads. The cost of failing to master this point is brutal. You become predictable. And in the emotional world of a mature woman, predictability is just another word for boredom. She starts listening to you like you're her brother. She looks at you like you're her therapist. And you still think you're connecting. You're not. You're fading out. Because you're not speaking to her desire. You're speaking to her reason. And her reason has already decided you're not taking her anywhere new. Can this be reversed? Yes, but not with more effort, with more direction, with fewer words, and more truth. You have to adopt a different mindset. You don't speak to convince, you speak to provoke. Your voice shouldn't sound like a plea, it should sound like a verdict. And that only happens when you are fully convinced of who you are, when you don't need her response to validate your desire. Break the pattern. Stop thinking eroticism is just visual or physical. A single word spoken at the right moment can be more devastating than any touch, but only if you say it with the energy of a man who doesn't beg, who doesn't wait, who's already decided. Because if you speak into her ear and she doesn't surrender, it's not because she doesn't feel. It's because you don't know what you're saying. And that can be changed. But first, go silent inside. And when you speak, make it shake her. If you were able to speak into her ear like a man who doesn't ask for permission, then you've already taken a step most never dare to take. But that's not enough, because a mature woman doesn't surrender just because of a well-placed word. She surrenders to a presence that asserts itself even in the forgotten corners of her body. And when I say forgotten, I mean it. There are places no one explores anymore. Not even she touches them with intention. And that's where you come in, where you must go, because we're now at the 6th point of this video, the part of her leg no one explores. Close your eyes for a second. Picture that woman you've been wanting for years, or the one you share a bed with, but not the fire. Picture her close, smiling, talking, pretending everything's normal. But under her skirt, beyond the obvious parts of her thighs, there's a place that hasn't felt desire in years. The inner side of her leg, near the knee, moving upward slightly, without touching the obvious, but announcing it. That part no man remembers to touch, because they all go straight for the goal, they all want results. But the men who bring true surrender understand the art of the detour. A mature woman responds to suggestion, not invasion. And if you reach that zone with impatient hands, with scattered desire, she shuts down. But if you arrive with patience, with a steady gaze, with held breath, her skin awakens. Because there, in that quiet stretch of her leg, she stores the memory of everything she never dared to ask for. That's where her frustration lives, her long-held hunger, her empty nights. And when she feels that a man, truly, explores her again like she's sacred, her body gives in, not out of weakness, out of relief. But if you can't read that, if you touch like someone following a script, if you believe desire only lives in the obvious, then she feels nothing. Or worse, she feels shame, feels used again, touched again out of duty, not real desire. And that, my friend, is where you lose. Because a woman can tolerate rejection, but not indifference disguised as passion. If you don't treat her body like new terrain, if you don't awaken what she thought had gone numb, then you're not making love. You're just going through motions. So many men are trapped in this cycle. They have her naked, but they don't see her. They touch her, but they don't feel her. They're there, but absent. And that's why every time it ends, she says nothing, but pulls away a little more. And you, not knowing why, start to feel her grow colder, less open, less engaged. It's not that she doesn't desire you. It's that you stop touching her where she could still feel. If you don't change this, if you don't understand that her body needs more than pressure and rhythm, you'll keep having sex, but never connection. You'll keep performing, but never igniting. And that's the most common mistake, touching what's obvious and forgetting what matters. Because in that part of her leg no one touches lies the key. And if you find it, if you awaken it, if you give her back the right to feel desired in the place she'd stopped expecting anything, she'll look at you differently. She'll fear you. She'll crave you. Because you made her feel again, without asking, without warning, without permission. Just like only a man who knows what he's touching can do. If you truly understood what we talked about in the previous point, then you already know that feminine desire doesn't live in the obvious. It lives in what's been denied, in what she herself stopped looking at. But there's a place even deeper than that. A place that isn't touched with hands or voice. It's touched with the scene, with the image, with the symbolism that awakens when the body is no longer just a body, but a reflection. We've reached the seventh and final point of this video, her reflection, not her body, her reflection. Think about it. A woman can endure routine, silence, even passionless sex. But there's one thing she can't bear for too long. Seeing herself as someone who no longer stirs anything, who's no longer wanted, who no longer ignites. And you, without realizing it, can either bring that fire back or put it out completely. Because when you place her in front of a mirror, when you make her look at herself while you take her, while you dominate her, while you guide her without a word, something shifts in her mind. It's not just her body reacting, it's her identity, her self-worth, her deepest erotic self. She sees herself, and in seeing herself, she remembers, and in remembering, she surrenders. A mature woman isn't looking to be touched, she's looking to feel alive, and nothing makes her feel more alive than knowing, truly knowing, that she's still desired, not out of habit, not out of duty, but from the elegant intensity of a man who places her in front of a mirror and tells her with his eyes, "Look at yourself, you're alive, because I'm looking at you." That moment breaks her, because she's no longer the mother, or the wife, or the professional. She's the woman, the one who hadn't died. She was just asleep. And you, with that gesture, that scene, that posture, are telling her what no one else has dared to in years. You still matter. You still provoke. You're still desirable. But only with me. This point isn't just the most powerful, it's the most forgotten. Because today's men don't understand female symbolism. They don't understand that a woman doesn't surrender when you penetrate her. She surrenders when you return to her the right to feel unique. And that happens in the mirror, because there are no excuses, no lies. What she sees is what you evoke. And if what she sees is strength, direction, real desire, then there's no turning back. Because no woman forgets the man who made her look at herself and love what she saw. Everything I've told you so far means nothing if you don't change, if you don't act, if you don't stop touching out of habit and start touching with purpose. There are no magic formulas, no guarantees, just one truth. Feminine desire responds to masculine presence, not to your touch, to your energy. And if you're not willing to embody that energy, then don't complain. Don't ask why she's cooling off, why she's pulling away, why she's avoiding you. The answer is in you, in how you touch, in how you speak, in how you make her feel when she's with you. Because she can leave 1,000 times, but if one day you made her look in the mirror and feel desired, then that day, no matter how far she goes, she'll never forget you, because you showed her who she was when she had already forgotten. If you've made it this far, you're not an ordinary man, because ordinary men check out when something makes them uncomfortable. They walk away when they're told the truth, but you stayed. You listened to every word, every revelation, every point most women would never dare to admit, and that makes you different. But listening isn't enough. Now you have a decision to make. You can keep touching the way you always have, or you can start touching like a man who awakens desire, not by accident, but through presence. Most men will keep repeating the same mistakes, chasing bodies that no longer feel them, begging for attention from women who no longer respect them. But you're not here for that. You're here to remember who you were before you were tamed, before the fear of rejection made you go soft. You're here to reclaim the role that is rightfully yours, the man a woman can't ignore. Because he doesn't just touch her, he transforms her. Drop a comment below with one sentence, "I master the game," and let me know what country you're watching from. Because it doesn't matter where you live, how old you are, or how much you've lost. What matters is that today, you chose to hear what no one else dares to tell you, and that, no matter how uncomfortable, is the beginning of everything. I'm Celia, woman, psychologist, therapist. I've spent over 20 years listening to women reveal their deepest, most hidden desires. This channel, House of Wisdom, doesn't exist to comfort you. It exists to awaken you, to remind you that you can still reclaim your strength, your respect, your direction, but only if you're willing to act. Subscribe. Be part of this community of men who chose to stop being victims and start leading their desire, their life, their story. And if this video shook something in you, share it, because maybe one of your friends needs to hear this before it's too late. Don't leave just yet. Watch the videos now appearing on your screen. Pick the one that makes you the most uncomfortable, because right there, in what you avoid the most, is exactly what you need to hear. And remember, if you don't touch with truth, someone else will.